Welcome, everyone, to the 27th episode of what is sure to someday become an absolute cult classic of news, entertainment, and information. My name is Bill Carns. This is my co-host, Dave Champion, and together we are
totally unprepared.
And we're back after a week off. We took last week off, had a little bit of summertime, family vacation time for myself, and
Awesome.
You actually had an interesting time, as I understand, while I was gone, Dave.
You're off having a good time, and I'm having something else go on.
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
So, Sunday, not as in 2 days
About
ago.
a week and a half back.
About a week and a half ago. Sunday afternoon, I come home. I live in a Southern California style, even though we're here in Pahrump. I live in one of the only Southern California style housing things. Not by choice, the long story.
Like a master plan community.
Master plan community, right. So, and I live on a cul-de-sac.
At the very end.
The very end. And so I come home and driving down the street and I see my house and I see my garage and I reach up to hit the garage door remote, and as I do, I look off to the left and I notice a Nye County undercover vehicle.
Now, if it's undercover, how do you know that's what it is?
Well, on first blush, I knew the same way you would know. You look at it and you go, oh, an undercover
Has
vehicle.
all the telltale signs.
All the telltale signs, right. And then, split second later, I realize it's Deputy Logan Gibbs. Okay. One of the Stress Six.
Okay, yeah, I recognize the name. Yeah.
Definitely in bed with Dave Berukowicz, that lovely human being. And I've talked about, time and again, the fact that Dave Berukowicz, two independent witnesses, have stated that they heard Dave Berukowicz say that they were going to set me up and falsely arrest me. Okay? So, with that in mind, and knowing that Logan Gibbs is one of that Stress Six crew that Berukowicz structured that whole bogus workers' comp thing, which was right after the bogus arrest of Rick Marshall and so forth. So, now, I'm sure we talked about this the last show we did together, where we were joking about, at least under DeMaio, like him, don't like him, at least under DeMaio, you had the expectation if you were a law-abiding citizen, you weren't going to get put in handcuffs and dragged off to jail. You discovered about 3 or 4 weeks ago that in Nye County, that's not true anymore. Okay?
Yeah, through Deputy, what was that guy's name?
Joseph McGill.
McGill, thank you.
Yes, okay. Where you were falsely and corruptly arrested. I want to stress the word corruptly because falsely, you can be arrested and it turned out you didn't actually do it or the facts were misconstrued. Corruptly, the inference, when I use the term at least, is the officer or deputy knows at the moment when they say, turn around and put your hands behind your back, they are violating their oath, they are lying, they are sacks of crap.
As a matter of fact, in my arrest, it's interesting, I have a copy of the arrest report, and in the narrative, after I had been booked, this guy ends up going elsewhere and interviews somebody else to find information, which then he says, based on what they told me, not by checking the law, I believe that this would be an additional element to a crime where, okay, if you didn't have that before you arrested me, you didn't have the elements of the crime to arrest me.
Right. Even after that, he didn't have the elements.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So, but that's what I mean by corruptly. Under this current new administration with Sharon Worley as sheriff, no longer is being a law-abiding citizen security from being corruptly arrested. Okay? And I've certainly been an outspoken critic of this administration, of this sheriff, and some of the people that she has promoted and that she holds very, very close to her. Some of them have criminal backgrounds and so forth. So,
Wait, on the sheriff's department?
Yeah, we've got guys actually arrested for violent felonies and things like that on the East Coast that are now Nye County sheriffs.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So, I see this Logan Gibbs fellow, this deputy, across the street from my house, law-abiding citizen. Why are you staking out my house? Okay. Needless to say, I'm going to have exactly that conversation. So I see the vehicle and I pull into my driveway and up into the garage. Before I have the door open, I can see in my side view mirror him accelerate like a bat out of hell.
Just dropping the hammer.
Yeah, and so I dash out and I look down the street. He's probably doing 65 or 70 down this little residential street. Yeah, and what he's trying to do very clearly is he was trying to ensure that this didn't happen. Okay, the videotaping of him being there or still photographs. Now, the KPVM news department felt that was newsworthy, and so they had me come down, and I shared the story as I'm sharing it now. And quite appropriately, the news department contacted Sharon Worley and said, "Is this true?" And Sharon said, "Yes, he was there, but it wasn't for Dave Champion." Yeah, because you know my community. It's a hotbed of crime, right? It is.
Yeah, I think you actually live in the right. I think everybody around you is retired or snowbird.
Oh yeah, they're all like 1,000
right?
years old. Yeah, yeah. And several doors down, there's a Metro cop, and several doors beyond that, there's a NHP. This is retired people and cops. I mean, this is not a hotbed of crime. But I loved it when she wasn't there for Dave Champion. Okay, look, this is a gal who lied about, I'm just going to throw out an arbitrary number, 90 to 95% of her qualifications to become sheriff. By my standards, she committed fraud upon the voters. She said, vote for me, this is who I am, this is my background, these are my qualifications, and it was all crap, okay? And now, we are to believe that somehow you go to her and say, why was Logan Gibbs taking out Dave Champion? Wasn't Dave Champion? Who? What? Yeah, it's kind of like asking Adolf Hitler, did you kill any Jews? Jews? No Jews. Yeah, so some gypsies, some enemies of the German people, but no Jews. There's the same credibility level here, right? I'm not talking about the severity of the conduct. I'm talking about the credibility factor.
Okay.
But things get funny then after this. Now, so KPVM posts that on their Facebook page, local Pahrump.
They played the interview on the news, correct?
They did,
okay,
yes. Yeah, and then they put it, as they do with a lot of things, on their Facebook page. It's so funny. Sharon Worley worshipers they're just out of their minds, because the interview goes up there where I'm saying exactly what I've said here, right? And this guy, Robert Ingersoll, says that I'm making it all up, I'm a liar, right? He says that 72 hours after Sharon already admitted that Logan Gibbs was out in front of my house.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that's kind of a knucklehead, this guy's. But that's sort of to me, I think he's the poster child for Worley supporters. Doesn't matter about the truth, doesn't matter about the facts. It's just like, I want to call you a liar. Just that's the kind of idiots they are.
There's a lot of passion in politics. There's a lot of passion outside of politics. It's human nature. There's a lot of passion. And people oftentimes don't want to believe that someone that they like or support or whatever would say, do, or believe something that they wouldn't. Or that a person that is a foe of someone that you support could ever have any credibility at all. And it's an interesting phenomenon.
It is.
Because you and I have both had support of, we supported people in our lives, be it political or personal or business-wise or whatever. And then we come to, we hear things rumbling about them. Oh, no, that's a great person. It's a great guy. It's a great lady. It's whatever. And then later you find out that's been a bit of a veil. And you realize, wow.
How many of us have
and
gone
how
through that?
Disappointed are we when we find that out? So I put a lot behind a number of people, but I have to say I have been surprised enough times in my life that I could never say that there's absolutely no way that this person could have this, that, and the other on an incredibly rare occasion now.
Yeah, I know.
When before it would be more common.
Right. Let me give you a parallel. In the dating world, right, what do people say a lot, especially these days? Friends first, okay, before you get into anything romantic and sexual. So when you're talking about like politics and this passion, that's why I think it's so important. Facts first.
Sure.
The passion second, facts first, which is what people like this Ingersoll character have never learned. Now, the interesting thing is, let us say for the sake of argument that my speculation is correct, that Dave Berukowitz is planning to make good on the threat that two independent witnesses have come forward with, and he's basically running the sheriff's department behind the nameplate of Sharon Worley. He's got to be laughing. He didn't spend a penny to run for sheriff, and he's actually the de facto sheriff, which I'm sure brings a smile to his face when he hears me say that. But let's say that is what's going on, and that's why Logan Gibbs was out in front of my house, and they're planning something. And you might have heard of the book Three Felonies a Day.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
Right, written by an attorney, makes the point that there's so many laws and so many regulations that law-abiding citizens violate at least one, sometimes as many as 3 laws, and sometimes 3 felonies in a single day unknowingly, because you cannot know. Look, the laws fill law libraries. You can't know them, right?
It kind of sounds like Atlas Shrugged.
Yes.
The way that they were coming in and telling Hank Rearden, look, we don't want you to change it. We'll just make the laws to where what you do on a normal basis is illegal.
Right. And so, somebody said to me, well, do you think that they're trying to find some little thing, you're a law-abiding citizen, but you didn't know you did this and they're going to hook you up? I said, it's possible. However, that wouldn't save them from the consequences, because under the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and I'm the media, so freedom of the press, they are not free to engage in actions which are taken for the purpose of retribution or intimidation to silence me in the future. That's what the Criminal Code of the United States government calls conspiracy to violate rights under the color of authority. Okay? And if they were to do that, which I speculate is what they're trying to do, what they're plotting to do, each conspirator, that's up to 10 years in a federal prison. So I hope they're thinking very carefully about that. They shouldn't be doing this to anybody. Okay? They shouldn't have done what they did to you. They shouldn't be doing this to me. They shouldn't be doing it to you. But the reality is, even if they found some little thing, and let's say I was guilty of not knowing that I did this little thing, okay? If they're treating me different than they're treating all the other citizens of Nye County, it's still for the purpose of
lying in wait, watching every move you make just to try to find you do something?
Right.
Is that where we're going
or
with
setting
this?
Me up,
Okay.
Planting evidence. It's still a violation of 18 U.S.C. 241. It's still conspiracy to violate the rights. It's still 10 years in prison. Like you say, who reported this tiny little minuscule thing that nobody knew about that I did? I'm a law-abiding citizen, and you're a law-abiding citizen, and you could have done it, and your daughters could have inadvertently done it. Now, it's still a violation of federal law.
And this USC would cover everybody that's involved in these discussions?
Yes. It's conspiracy to violate rights. And there's not one guy doing this. It's Berukowitz and his crew, so.
Interesting, because you were saying earlier that there's people on this department, a second chance department, as I'm told, that have criminal backgrounds.
Oh, yes, more than one, as a matter of fact.
This is interesting, Dave.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And we'll be back right after these words. And we are back, and now it's time for... All right. What is up with this stuff where people say, well, they're not real this or real that? This has almost reached epidemic proportions, and let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to start by talking about, for instance, the Republican Party. Now, I use the Republican Party because the Republican Party at this moment in America's history is highly fractured. It's factionalized. There's very little agreement within the Republican Party nationally. The people that call themselves Republicans, there's very little agreement on what that means. You go to the Dem side, it's pretty cohesive. They might have minor trivial differences, but there's no real breaches. You go to the Republican Party, and nobody can agree on anything. So if, for instance, you point out that somebody who's a Republican politician supported obscenely higher taxes or supported immigration reform, which always means that people who enter the country illegally are going to get to stay and they're going to get to share in all the benefits of being here and so forth. Okay? And I can go on and on with all of these factionalized positions. And when you say, here's a good example, Karl Rove. You remember him from the Bush administration, arguably one of the biggest names, one of the most influential Republicans in D.C., said that if we want to solve gun violence, which, by the way, does not exist, that's just a media term, that the American citizens need to get enough, to quote, enough oomph to repeal the Second Amendment. Okay? This from a member of the GOP. So you look at all these positions, these nutty things that the GOP are saying, and what happens then is you have all these Republicans that turn around and point to that guy who believes in immigration reform and that guy who talks about repealing the Second Amendment and so forth. And all these other people look and go, well, he's not a real Republican, and he's not a real Republican. Okay? They're all under the banner of Republican. Now, here's the thing. The guy who believes in immigration reform, he believes he's a real Republican, and the people who aren't with him are not real Republicans. Okay? Somebody who's a Republican, George Will, famous commentator, political commentator for the last 30, 40 years, okay? He was opposed. He thought the Second Amendment needed to be repealed right up until it started impacting his revenue and conservative journals started dropping his articles, and then he suddenly became a fan of the Second Amendment. He would look at people who didn't support the Second Amendment and say they're not real Republicans, right? It's crazy. Another place where I see this all the time is Christianity. Now, let me say Christianity and Islam. Okay? I don't see this so much with Judaism, Buddhism, but Christianity and Islam. Obviously, since in this country less than 1% of the population is Muslim, I hear it much more from Christians, but I have indeed heard it from Muslims. And that is, this guy is not a real Christian, or he's not a real Muslim, okay? And it's so funny because there are roughly 40 different divisions of belief within the Christian community. That's not denominations. Denominations mean something different. That's like an organizational thing. But as far as what they believe the doctrines of Christianity should be or are, there's 40 different divisions, okay? And it's great. One of the things that's popular right now as far as talking about it is the same-sex marriage issue. And I will comment about somebody who opposes same-sex marriage. And inevitably, let's say the person's a Christian. Some Christians will weigh in and say, he's a good Christian man, he's following the Bible. And then some other Christians will chime in and say, he's not a real Christian because a real Christian is not a bigot, blah, blah, blah. You see where I'm going with this. It's within their same family, their same group. He's not real and he's not real, but they're all flying the same banner. Bill, what do you think about that?
I see this, I understand your basis for the argument, but having been involved in the Republican Party, and I was at one point in time baptized, it's interesting. You actually...
Baptized in the GOP, were you?
Yeah. I am much more involved in the political organization. You have a history having been more involved in the religious areas. So this is kind of an interesting way to go about it. I see the whole thing with Christianity as just the same goofy ping pong ball being bounced around inside of the same sphere. And, you know, everybody's supposed to be believing in the Bible, and what it is, well, how we interpret the way the Bible should be. With the GOP, I see it's a little bit different. There is a lot of fractionalization, and there are not so much in the Democrats. And what I really put this to is people that are a little bit more A-type personality, that have the ability to use their squash and think analytically, tend to be a little bit more conservative, generally speaking. People that are...
But if I may, and I don't mean to take this off in left field, we can continue on with what you're saying. I just want to point out the word conservative itself is open to vast interpretation.
I would agree. I'm using this common terminology that we would expect for this discussion.
Okay.
Because if you look at the original word of liberal, those of us who are today considered conservative, we would have been liberal 120 years ago.
Classic liberalism.
Classic liberalism.
John Locke, Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, now it's a different definition.
Sure.
So anyhow, with that being said, the people that tend to follow the cattle train and just, yeah, whatever, the government should do this because I'm too lazy, stupid, inept, whatever, to get it done. I want the government to handle it. Generally a little bit more to the left, if you believe the left-right paradigm, and generally more Democrat. Now, with the conservative areas, with the Republican Party, you have to realize the way this whole thing starts is you have your regular everyday people. We'll start here in Nye County, right? If you want to get involved, you can go to the precinct meetings, which we will have coming up this next fall in February. From there, you can become a voting member of the local Republican Party, if you like, or an associate member, or an affiliate, if you will. Or alternate, rather, is the word. But you can become a member.
Is this like church, you have to donate?
No, you don't have to donate.
I'm kidding.
You don't. Now, and I have a funny thing to say about Christianity.
That's only
later.
Scientology. Oh, never
So
mind, I'm getting way out.
you would go to the precinct meetings. If you want to be involved, you could become a voting member of the local county party, of which I currently chair in Nye County. And from there, you could go to you would go to the convention. Then at the convention, you get certified as a member, which is a 2-year cycle. From there, you could become a member of the convention to the state, and you could also become a member of the state central committee, of which I am. And then from there, you could also become a member, you could become a delegate to the national committee. So you have all these levels. Now, at the county level, we have we have our platform, and there's planks to the platform. We have 11 or 12 of them that define who we are as a county party. The state has that platform as well, and then there's a national platform. So there really is a guide on how to decide, is this person truly a Republican, truly a member of the party? Do they subscribe to the beliefs? Because the people at all these different levels put these platforms together. Mm-hmm. And the higher up you go, the more interested you are in the party. And the thing is, most politicians never look at the platform. Okay. They don't get it.
2 comments on this. Number one, we don't need to address this. This is just a left field comment. One of the observations about Mitt Romney in the last presidential election was that he signed off on, to be a Republican and follow the Republican platform. And then when he went out and campaigned, he didn't pay any attention to the Republican platform. Also, I met a woman a year or so ago who is a registered Republican and a politician who is infuriated with the Nye County Republican Party because she says, this goes to who's a real Republican, right, which is the whole theme of this discussion. She says that the platform of the Nye County Republican Party is not in alignment with the national goals of the Republican Party, and therefore she was pissed off like a rattlesnake at you and your people, claiming that the county platform is not Republican. It's not real Republican.
It's interesting because I've heard that from a couple of people, and that same person might have been one of them. We actually consult the national platform, which is written like a book, mm-hmm. and the state platform before we go to our convention and go through the platforms. We go through this to make sure that they are in line, because if they're not in line, then we can't have them. And I've heard that same literal garbage from a number of people mm-hmm. who haven't read the state or national platforms. If you go to our website, nygop.org, you can actually click on business and go to the platforms. We have links to all of them, and you'll see that they're all within line. Now, when it comes to Christianity, it's interesting. A guy that I know, you know him as well.
Or Islam, by the way. I have heard Muslims tell me concerning like extremely violent Muslims, they're not real Muslims. So this is not just Christianity.
I get it. It's just, I just wanted to say something that was interesting. A buddy of mine, he told me this one time. He heard it from someone else. And he said, let's see, Christianity started in the 1st century as a relationship with Jesus Christ. From there, it moved to Greece, where it became a philosophy. From there, it moved to Rome, where it became an institution. From there, it came to America, where it became a business. And that is when it came to me. So I found this to be very profound.
Yeah.
As in when Gandhi said, not too awful long ago, I like your Christ. I'm just not too fond of your Christians.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we have this huge makeup of people that have their own beliefs. Well, this is how I was taught to believe, and this is going to be now my personal definition based on that. It is nutty. It's nutty.
Now, because of our civil laws in America, this doesn't take place. But in history, in places where the laws were not what our laws are today, different religious sects, including Christian sects, that's SECTS,
yes.
Murdered each other. Was it you who was reading recently? Somebody commented to me about this big dispute in Brussels a couple hundred years ago.
Wasn't me.
And one faction slaughtered, these are Christians, faction slaughtered another faction of Christians. And then, it's funny because a lot of people say there are 3 crusades. Here, at least in America, they teach there's three large crusades. Historians actually say there was 4. There was a first one that was a complete failure. They never even made it to the Middle East. But on the way, they ended up running out of food. And so they slaughtered like 30,000 Christians to take their food. So, I mean, you look at this stuff and
more people have died at the hands of religious fanaticism than anything else in the history of mankind.
yeah, and you know, so it's like,
But
he's
I don't
a real
think
Christian,
too many.
he's a real
I don't think
Republican.
too many Buddhists have done this.
Yeah.
I don't think Buddhists have slaughtered other people for that. I got to tell you, if
They have.
Have they?
Yes.
Well, then I'll have to look
You
at
gotta
it.
read the
'cause
history, yes.
I got to tell you, if it was today's day and age and I was told you have to practice a religion, I think being a Buddhist would probably be the most chill thing there is. And I wouldn't have to give tithings.
That's the American version of Buddhism. In the rest of the world, in other parts of the world, Buddhism is just as insane as Islam or
All right,
Christianity.
well, I guess I can write that one off. Maybe I'll start, I'll follow a buddy of mine and start his Church of the Celestial Bunny.
There you go.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now it's time for me to rant. You know what really grinds my gears? You know what? Right now, there's so much going on in the world, so much going on in my life. I got to tell you, I haven't even been able to prioritize anything specific. It's all bothering me. It really is. And this time of year, I get like this. I get in a pickle because we're in the Mojave Desert, which gets hot. This last weekend, it was what, close to 110 degrees in, you know, just past middle of June? That's insane. We got 2 more months of heating up. I gotta tell you, I moved to this desert 35, 36 summers ago, and it really wears on me. It does. As the temperature goes up, man, things just, I don't like it. I can't handle this desert like this much anymore. It's a good thing I have good, well-serviced air conditioners in my house and my vehicles, because otherwise I don't think I'd make it. A lot of different things have been bothering me. And, you know, I have come on here a couple of times and I have talked about the way people drive, the way people are when they're out shopping, just in consideration for everybody else. Everyone is so about themselves and they don't really care about anybody else out there. And I have to say, I didn't grow up like that. I grew up in the 70s and into the 80s. And if I could put my finger on where I think American society really started to fall apart, I would have to say it was during the Vietnam War, where people decided that they didn't like the war, so they were going to get high, make love, not war, and they were going to protest everything. And then they ended up having kids and taught the kids, you know what, make love, not war, just peace, don't worry about it, throw everything into the wind, no responsibilities. Now we're about 3 or 4 generations into that, of people who didn't have responsible parents, and it just doesn't work out anymore. You know, every week I have a meeting with a group of fellas, and I am the youngest or the second youngest member of about 2 dozen of these fellas that show up to this group. Conservative group, we talk about local, state, and national things that go on. We try to improve things, get stuff going on. And, you know, it's interesting when we talk about times where we go somewhere and we get exceptionally good service, it kind of rings a bell to everybody in there. Because exceptionally good service used to be the rule. Now it's the exception. If I get excellent service when I go somewhere, I tell people about it because I'm happy that I got excellent service. When I was a kid, a little kid, we used to get great service everywhere. It would be an exception if you got bad service. If somebody just didn't really care about their job, they didn't talk to you, they didn't really care about you. You know, it was interesting. I was in Las Vegas recently and went to go do some grocery shopping for a friend of ours. And there was a lady behind the counter she was checking, and there was a girl that was a bagger. It was an independent grocery store, a good sized one, but there's not a bunch of them. It wasn't like a big Albertsons or a Safeway or something. And I walked up and I could tell that the lady who was the checker wasn't having a great day. And she was probably in her late 40s, early 50s. And so I said something, I don't remember what it was. I said something very nice to her. And I said, you know, it looks like you're having a difficult day. I hope we can help make it a little bit brighter. And it struck a chord with her. And she said that unfortunately earlier in the day, she'd been assigned to work in floral And the lady who managed the floral department didn't like her. And that made it for a rough morning. To which I told her, you know, it's unfortunate when people feel that they need to tear you down in order to make themselves feel better because they're a little bit miserable in their own skin. And I have to tell you, I am glad that we came here and we chose your line to come through because for whatever reason, you are helping to make our day a little bit brighter. And when we were only buying a dozen things or so, by that time we were all checked out. This lady, she actually cried, feeling better. And I believe that there was, for whatever reason, I was destined to go into this lady's line and help make her otherwise crappy day a better one. And you just don't see that very often anymore. And I challenge everybody out there, everybody, to do two things simultaneously, smile and wave. Today, I was actually driving. I show up to an intersection about a second or so ahead of another driver. I get to the stop sign first. 90 degrees to my right, this other person rolls up. As soon as their tires stop moving, I go through. Well, this person decided, well, you know what? Maybe they were stopped too long, or maybe even though we got there before me, I'm on the right, so I'm going to try to go through too. I go through the intersection. I'm halfway through as this person goes through and blasts their horn at me. And I got to tell you, what an a-hole. What an a-hole this lady was for doing that. You know, all you have to do is follow the rules of the road, and everything's going to be fine. How did you allow yourself to get so ticked off at me for following the rules of the road and you not waiting your turn that you tried to make me the a-hole about it? I don't get it. You know what? Smile and wave. Just smile and wave. Say hi to your neighbors. You're driving down the street, you see somebody, smile and wave. Now, if you're going 40 down a small residential road, don't smile and wave because you're being the a-hole. Slow down a little bit. Leave a little earlier. Get your act together, everybody. I mean, come on. What does it take to actually have a polite society, Dave Champion? What does it take?
It takes, to me, respect for other people. It's funny, two things that you said resonated with me. Number one, the part about smile. True story. Remember the LA riots?
Oh, yeah.
I was working in the LA riots.
Well, let's say which one. You're talking about the Rodney King riots.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So I roll out. We're in what they call in the LA area dual-purpose cars. The rest of the country probably just calls them plain wrap. Everybody goes, it's like blue or green, but everybody goes, look, a police car, right? You know?
Right. But it doesn't have a badge on the side.
Correct. It's not painted black and white or whatever. Okay. And so we've got two units like this. I'm the commanding officer. I'm in the lead vehicle. I've got a bunch of other guys and a bunch of other guys in the car behind. And we're driving in an area that would not be considered a good area.
Okay, so you're rolling 4 deep times 2.
Correct.
In tandem.
Correct. Okay. And we're driving along, and normally, you know, in LA, no one's on the sidewalks. I mean, that's a New York thing. That's not an LA thing, right? And there are literally hundreds and hundreds of people out on the sidewalk. Okay. Probably about 1 in 4 armed. Okay. And you know, Southern California, guns are typically not permissible and never out in public, right? But since it was on, right, and all the controls were off, there's hundreds of people milling around, shotguns, rifles, handguns, stuff, in a not good neighborhood, right? And you can imagine this is a little stressful, right? And we're driving along and we're looking at them, they're looking at us, and I just had this thing. I said, you know what, I'm done with this. And I hit my button and dropped my window, and I looked out, and I did very intentionally, I did this. And you know what, like 100 people did?
Same thing.
They were stressed too, right? There's this, us, them, armed. I've got guns, they've got guns, right? And so I told the guy, I got on the radio to the guys behind me. I said, roll down your windows, wave at these guys. And they did, and they got waved back. So then we flipped a U-turn, came back, pulled up at the curb, got out and started shaking their hands and talking to them, saying, how can we help you? Okay? These were not the people rioting, okay? But had we not, the smile thing, had we not changed that dynamic, who knows how that story would have ended. But you talked about how do we have a more polite society. To me, treat everybody who has not otherwise been a sphincter already, okay? with dignity. Simple as that. You don't have to like somebody to treat them with dignity.
You know, there's two things I really hate hearing. Whatever, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, nothing destroys something that you say more than finishing an otherwise rational thought, lucid comment, and then finishing it by saying, or whatever. You could have just solved the financial crisis and then finish it with, or whatever, and it no longer matters.
Right.
Sometimes people will say whatever to someone else's concern, whatever, and brush you off. You know, talk to the hand sort of thing.
Yeah.
I know it's old, dating myself. Or, I don't care.
And who was it? Fran Drescher.
Was it?
Talk to the hand.
Yeah, there you go.
Now I'm admitting myself that I even know this.
Oh,
Okay,
man.
but you know what?
She was a dish back
That's
in the
what
day,
I was going to
wasn't she?
say.
Yeah.
I only know because she was hot.
So
she still is, by the way.
Is she? Yeah, I haven't seen her. So, interesting thing, like my kids, right? I want to take my kids or my girlfriend or whomever, and we want to go to the local Walmart, which the local Walmart here, I got to tell you, you walk in there and there's people that are wearing their pajamas and their slippers and everything, and it's not proper. There's nothing illegal about it, but it's like, have a little self-respect and a little respect for the other people that are out there. And it gets to the point where instead of raising the bar yourself, it's like, you know, we're just going to Walmart, everybody dresses like a slug when they go there. You know, that's still not okay.
Oh, I'm with
That's
you.
not okay for you, for me, for anybody else. Some people are going to be the way that they are.
Yep.
And if all they happen to have are some dirty PJs that they never get out because they have no self-respect for themselves or whatever the case may be. I don't know what the case is. I want to be comfortable. You know, that's fine, being comfortable at home. That's what pajamas are for. Now, you probably remember flying, 50s, 60s, 70s, well, not 50s, but 60s and 70s, flying. Everybody dressed up. When I was a kid in the 70s and we flew, you wore nice clothes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, now that's a completely different dynamic now because of this garbage with the TSA. You got to take your shoes off. People are wearing lightweight stuff, shoes that flip on and off.
I think it's also different
Nobody
because they
dresses
compress
up.
the seats so close together.
Yeah.
I remember when I flew as a boy with my parents, it was pretty spacious. Now, I dress as comfortably as possible because of TSA, and also I know I'm going to be shoehorned into this little spot for the next 4.5 hours.
It's a cattle call.
Yeah.
So I get that. But, you know, when you're taking that to the next level and to the next level, I mean, I've actually been to the Walmart here in Pahrump, and then I go to a mall in Vegas, and people are dressed quite a bit differently. I'm not saying that
Yes, they
Walmart is the mall. It kind of is around town. But the thing is that you're out of your house, you're out around town,
It's
out
as
and
close
about
to
doing
a mall
things.
as we have in Pahrump.
What it is it's you're out of your house and you're doing stuff around town. I mean, have a little self-respect. How are you to clean up your own life if you can't clean up yourself?
Remember when a gentleman would never step indoors with a hat on?
Correct.
Okay. My grandfather, he always wore a hat. And as soon as he crossed that threshold, hat off. Now I go to restaurants, and probably half the men in the restaurants have their hats on or have their hats on indoor.
And you even get guys that are kind of gentlemen, if you will, that wear cowboy hats. The real cowboys take them off.
Yeah.
The wannabe fake a-hole cowboys, leave them on indoors.
And you'll never see me with a hat on indoors because I was raised with that as manners.
Yeah, remove your cover when you go inside.
Yep.
All right.
We'll be back. Alrighty, we are back. Segment 4, where we talk about the things that you want to talk about, provided it's also the things we want to talk about. You can go ahead and email us anytime you want at that email address. Bill, you're better at this than I am. I never quite got that down. Okay. You can also watch the show at
TotallyUnprepared.info.
Oh, yeah, there it is. We're also on Facebook. However, before we launch into what we're going to talk, by the way, keep in mind, sometimes if you email us, it may be weeks until we get to talk about what a particular topic because we have other things that come first. So if we don't talk about yours right away, don't lose heart. Go ahead and email us. We'll get there eventually. But before we do, a couple shout outs to some local businesses who are, Bill and I have a philosophy that not a lot of places are doing quality business and that we want to acknowledge the places that are doing better than
Above
average.
average, yeah.
There you go. Above average jobs.
They're setting a good bar.
Yes, and I want to start out by giving a shout out to Fit for 10, the gym that happens to be right across the street from the place you're going to give a shout out to. You know, I said before I wasn't too sure about that place because it's kind of a budget operation. But I've got to tell you, the owner there has been. It's clean. New equipment seems to be coming in every 2 or 3 weeks, which in this town makes it incredibly unique. It's clean. The nicest people work there. The equipment's pretty good. They've got personal trainers. Even though that's an old building that leaks air like a sieve, they are pumping the AC and it's still cool in there. So I really want to give Fit for 10 the credit they deserve for, you know, this town has never had a really wonderful gym. All of them have been so-so. These guys are as close to a wonderful gym as we've ever had, and until we get something like a Las Vegas Fitness or something that decides to come out to Pahrump. Until then, these guys are a pretty good substitute for that quality of gym.
And these guys are on Loop Road.
They are.
And not like a block or so from the old Ace Hardware, across from Threads.
The Goodwill Threads.
Yeah.
And
across from PV Wings and Things, who I wanted to talk about. Wings and Things, it used to be the old Last Chance Steakhouse.
Yes.
You know, I used to refer to it as Fat Chance, because Fat Chance, you're going to find me in there.
I remember you did that.
I was not a fan of the food. I was not a fan of the service. I would go there only when I was going to be involved in a group dinner and group discussion where it was out of my control where we were eating. That's the only time I was going in there, which is why I called it Fat Chance. Fat Chance, you're going to find me in there.
I think you had a little tiff with the server one time in there.
I did not. No. What it was another guy in this lunch party that I was there for was treated like a child by the owner.
Oh.
And I thought how amazingly disrespectful that was for your paying customer who was doing nothing, just whatever it may have been. But now Heath Campbell and his father are primary owners in it. It is called Wings and Things, PV Wings and Things. They show the UFC fights. They have a nominal entry fee for whatever it is. So the next UFC that's coming up, I think on July 11th they have. He started recently beer pong, which some people dig.
Lord,
now,
here we go.
Now, I'm not a beer pong kind of guy, but I got to tell you, Heath knows what he's doing behind the bar. He's got some other really good bartenders in there, great servers. A guy by the name of Big is running the kitchen. He's got great burgers, including he's got the old Archie's burger. For those of you who've been in town for a long time, remember Archie's? He has his version of the classic Archie's burger. They have, just wonderful sides. It's good quality food, good drinks, and it's a nice, clean atmosphere. It's got all new furnishings and decor and such. And Wings and Things, it's up there on Loop Road, again, across from Fit for 10 and Threads.
Now, I have to admit, got to come clean. I've never stepped foot in there. I'm going to have to, obviously. It sounds like what you're describing, if I read between the lines, is they're doing something really unique that you can't find anywhere else in Pahrump.
Pretty unique, yeah, because they've got some neat things that they're offering in the bar scene. They've got good food, and it's not just bar food. I mean, you got a separate restaurant from the bar. You can get drinks in the restaurant, you can get food in the bar, but there's a window that goes right down the middle of the on a wall. Yeah, and it's whatever side you want to go into. Great, they got a lot of TVs. They'll play sports and other things in there. And I got to tell you, Heath he's the funniest dude. I know Heath. We're pals. We're Facebook friends. We got to be close, right? But Heath's a pal, and he's a neat guy. We go in there, and we immediately, just in a very funny way, just start busting each other's chops. And it's a lot of fun to see him. I go in there every couple of weeks and grab some chow, grab some drink. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. He has to split shifts as well. But I really like what they're doing in there. They've got nice people. There's some folks that work in there that I've seen working at other places around town that were good at these other places, but those other places are sometimes now closed or what have you.
The story of Pahrump.
Good spot, yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like they're distinguishing themselves by quality.
They are, and I got to tell you, it's good beer, good drinks. And really good food, and Big is doing a bang-up job in the kitchen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about what a viewer emailed us about. What are typically called 80% lowers.
Yes.
It's a phenomenon. I'm going to let you define it in a moment, but I do want to comment that there's now been a bill introduced in, it has to go into committee and it's got to survive and get out of committee for a vote. But there has been a bill introduced, Conyers. I'm paraphrasing the title, the 2015 bill to prohibit home-built weapons or whatever. It tries to stop what you're about to talk about.
Yeah, there is a provision within the law where you can build your own personal firearm for your own personal use. Okay, as long as it's not like full auto or too short or some of the other provisions of the NFA of 1930s.
You can build a standard weapon.
A standard weapon for yourself, as long as you don't have the intent of selling it to someone else, and it doesn't have to have a serial number, no registration,
no intent of selling it in interstate commerce. I think federally is where the problem arises.
I'm not exactly
like I could
sure.
sell it to you, but if I sold it to a guy who might reasonably be going back to Utah, then there's a problem because that's where the whole.
And again, it's intent.
Yes,
it's not that if you build it, you can't get rid of it. It's if you have the intent, which is, it's a unique structure within the law, intent, proving intent, such as that. But the thing is you're able to mass sell versions that aren't quite firearms. We talk about the receiver, or if it was an AR-15, it'd be called a lower. A 1911, the part that the magazine goes into in most guns, that's called the receiver. That's what's regulated in this country.
Yep. Let me go back because I used to be an FFL holder. Okay. The serial number part, which is for like an AR would be the lower. For a 1911, it's the frame, the part that you hold on to that's below the moving slide. The serial number part in federal law is the firearm.
Yes.
In other words, if I were to take this 1911 out right here and detail strip it and hold up just the detail stripped frame, that is the firearm. All these parts are not a firearm.
Right.
I wanted to tell it.
Yeah, through their definitions at ATF. So when it comes to these 80%ers, as they're called, you're able to mass sell these receivers, if you will. We're just going to call them lowers or receivers, that are 80% complete, and then you can buy it 80% complete because it's not considered a firearm. You can then use the instructions that come with it and finish it yourself. Finish drilling it out, whatever it is, and then build your own gun with it.
The idea is, when Bill says that's not a firearm, the language of federal law states that for it to be a firearm, it has to be ready for assembly with the rest of the parts that make it operational.
Correct.
So when you buy an 80% receiver and it's missing 3 holes or whatever is not there, it's not ready to be assembled, hence it is not a firearm, hence it is not required to be serialized under federal law and so forth. So if I had a box of 80% lowers, I could go around and sell them like books at a bookstore.
Yeah, or coffee mugs or whatever.
Right, they're not guns.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's a company called Ayers Armory.
Oh, yeah.
ARES. And they specialize in 80% lowers and uppers and all kinds of stuff. And
that owner's got some cojones, too.
Well, now, he actually sold out the majority of his ownership. You're talking about Dimitri. However, one thing he did was he walked into an ATF office in, I think it was Indiana, with a 99% complete lower, offering to sell it to anybody who wanted to buy it, with the description that he got from his attorneys that says, actually, the way we read this, a 99% lower is legal. So he offered to try and sell it, see if he would get arrested, see if he would get confiscated. Nothing happened. Directly into the ATF office doing this. Now, this is a guy with, like you said, a lot of cojones. And nothing happened at that point in time. It still hasn't at this point. So I think what he's doing is trying to gear up to actually be able to sell 99% lowers, which means all you'd have to do is literally drill a hole and you'd be good to go. Otherwise, there's some milling, machining such as that. You can do it with 1911s, with AR-15s, they're very popular. AR-10s are very popular. There's a lot of them out there.
1911s, like Glocks, but for men. I know I'm going to get some angry emails about that.
Whatever. I got to tell you, I carry all kinds of different handguns, and I am not. I mean, I prefer my 1911s, but Glocks have their place. Smaller guns that are 380s have their place. I carry all kinds of different guns. I am not like a name.
So you're a gun whore.
Yeah, I'm not like a name brand Priss or a style Priss. If it's the right gun for the job, carry it. I mean, I'm the weapon. This is a tool.
I'm in a committed relationship with the 1911.
Well, and you recently, I say recently, within the last several years, went from standard 1911s to these higher end 1911s as well.
Yes.
And there is a difference.
There is, and I went there because I had a conversation with Travis Brown, the son of Ed Brown, who owns Ed Brown Products, which is one of the largest, most prestigious manufacturers of 1911s in the country, one of the top three. And based on that discussion with my background and so forth, they actually introduced the Champion Malone Lave 1911, which was named after me, and it was their #1 selling signature piece of all time. A lot of people watching here, especially in Pahrump, don't know my background in that regard. So that's kind of the impetus for staying at that level.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I mean I've fired a number of 1911s from the the more basic version, and you do get what you pay for, but at a certain point you end up paying so much more. And the gun's pretty nice, but is it really worth $4,000 when you could have got an otherwise ultra nice gun for $1,200 or $1,500?
Yeah, one of the things I tell people when they say, why would I spend $3,000 on a 1911? I said, because you'll be able to shoot the snot out of it. Then you'll be able to give it to your son who can shoot the snot out of it. Then he can give it to his son who can shoot the snot out of it. Yeah, it's quality.
Yeah, the snot shooters. That's a face shot right to the bridge of the nose. So anyhow, with that being said about the 80% lowers, now you can buy all of the pieces, parts, the lower kits. You can buy an upper and assemble it all yourself. No serial number, no registration.
Sell jigs to put the missing holes in.
They do.
Yeah,
they do. So there you go. There's your 80% lowers. Send us your emails. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.